Hello everyone, my name is Christian Para and I am a QA tester and I do technical support for Autonomic, a Snap AV company. The agenda for today's training video will be 1. A walkthrough setup and configuration of the Autonomic audio system and Crestron using the media player object. And 2, from there we'll move on to an explanation of the Crestron user interface. The Autonomic Crestron sample program allows the integration of the autonomic music servers and autonomic amplifiers in a Crestron environment. Some of the key features of the Crestron interface are complete access to all your configured streaming services, local content, playlist, and favorites, full control of the autonomic TuneBridge cross-platform search feature, and you'll have the ability to control multiple servers and amps in one interface. The equipment we will be using in today's training session will be an MMS 5E media server, an M801E amplifier, the Pro 3 Crestron processor, and our programming will be done on simple Windows version 4.09.04, and our panel will be the Crestron X Panel Windows OS application. It's also important to note that the Crestron sample program is not limited to this system. Our sample program is compatible with all current Series 3 processors. Before opening simple Windows, be sure your server is on the latest public firmware, as well as the amplifier. Also be sure to have your server and amplifier on the same system ID. Now that we've discussed compatibility and background of the Autonomic Crestron sample program, we will move on to the configuration, and the latest sample program can be found on the Autonomic or Snap AV website. If it's not available in those sites, Level 2 Autonomic support will have access to the sample program. After downloading the sample program, open the archive and look for the file with the file extension SMW. But before we continue, let's be sure to set our eMMS and eAmp to the same system ID. And once we've done that, we will also verify to make sure that each instance has an eSource position on the amplifier config page. All right, so let's go to the config page of the server. This is my media server. So we'll go to System. Then we'll add a component. The component we'll be adding is a M801E, and my amplifier ends on IP 1361. Here's my amplifier, 1361. Press Add. Just give it a few seconds for it to configure. All right, it seems like our amp and server are now on the same system ID. Next, we're going to go to the amp config page, and you could do that by going to this gear icon on the right side of the amplifiers box. Select that, then select Edit. Then at the top, you're going to select Configure. That'll open up the config page for the amplifier. From there, we'll go to Sources and make sure that all our 5 instances have 5 eAudiocast sources. And we do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then they're all for the Mirage Media server. All right, at this point, you could download the sample file. I have already downloaded it, and it's Snap AV sample, Crestron E server, and eAmp. We're gonna double click the folder, and now we're gonna look for the SMW file. And this is the SMW right here. As you can see, the SMW extension, double click that. Give it a few seconds to load up. It sometimes takes a while for the Crestron Simple Windows program to load up. All right. Initially, you're going to see that it says some errors. You could just skip the details. Once you skip details, you'll be at this window. Once you get to this window, you're going to go to this configuration icon. It looks like a barbecue grill sort of. And if you hover your mouse over it, it'll say configure. Click on that. And then you'll end up on this view. As mentioned earlier, I'm using a Pro 3 processor. In this setup, it's using an MC3 processor. You can see the processor information right over here. It's in the system views box. It's the box below it. And all you need to do is just click on MC3, right click on it, then replace MC3, and then you're going to look for your processor. The processor I am using today is a Pro 3. So here's the Pro 3. I'm going to click OK. It's going to say some programming may be lost. Don't worry about that. Just say replace MC3 with Pro 3. Click yes. It's also going to give you a warning. Just click OK. It may also ask you, unfortunately it didn't ask me, but it may also ask you if you want to keep the revised program. If it asks you that question, you're going to say, yes, I wish to keep the revised program. Okay, so we have switched over the processor. Now we're using a Pro 3. At this point, we could pretty much set up the amplifier. The amplifier is this TCP client. Also, it's also device ID 66, as you can see. You're going to right click it, go to configure. Just for this example, I'm also going to label it eAmp. We'll click OK. All right, so it says eAmp, right click, go to configure. Then you're going to go to the IP net address tab. From there, you're going to go to the default address box. And in those fields, you're going to enter your IP address. Mine ends in 1361. It's already entered. So once you enter, you're going to hit apply and then OK. And there, our amplifier is set up. From here, we can go back to the configuration view or the program view. It looks like a bug-like Lego piece. So you're gonna, if you hover over it, it says program. You're gonna select that. And next, you're gonna open up in the program view. You're gonna see a folder that says Central Control Modules. You're gonna collapse that folder. And in there, you're gonna see a few slots. Slot 5 contains my MMS, my X panel, and my eAmp. Now, the information I need here is the IP ID for the autonomic MMS. It says MMS 5A. You could disregard that. You don't have to worry about that. The MMS 5A device symbol works with the 5E, 3E, and the 1E. There's no problem using the 5A device symbol. As mentioned, you're going to want to jot down the IP ID information, which is IP ID 62 for the for the MMS media server. We're going to use this information later in the config page of the MMS. And you're going to also want to jot down the X panel IP ID, as you're going to need this to set up your X panel. So the X panel is IP ID 63. At this point, you go up to the projects in the file or the menu bar. You're going to go up to projects and you're going to go to recompile all. You could also hit the shortcut, which is Alt F12. So select recompile all. It's going to say if you want to save, just say yes. It's also going to say that there are a few comment out symbols. Do you want to continue? Just click yes. It's going to start compiling the program. Just give it a few seconds. All right, it's going to give you a few program warnings and notices. It's actually a couple, it's up in the thousands, but you don't need to worry about that. The only time you won't be able to transfer a file is if we had errors, but since we don't, we'll be able to transfer it. So just select yes. And then you're going to see a bunch of processors. If you have not added your processor or if you don't see your processor, all you're going to do is select add entry. You're going to get a blank box with a blank field to enter a name and address. In the field, you'll enter the name of the processor, whatever you wish to name it. I have mine labeled as Pro 3. And then once I enter the name, you're going to go to the right side where it says select entry. The connection type is a TCP. So the again, the connection type is TCP. So you're gonna add entry, enter a name, and then you're gonna select connection type TCP. Below that, where it says IP address, you're gonna enter the IP address of your processor. Then you press enter, and then you'll be able to select the field. Make sure it's selected blue, and then from there you click OK. So that's pretty much we're selecting the destination of where our program's gonna go. Okay, so this is pretty much inside the processor. There's some processor information, and these are all the different slots or program slots. So that means you could have up to 10 different programs in this processor, the Pro 3 I'm using. I'm going to use slot 2. Now, a little information. Each program needs to have a unique IP ID. So if we're using program slot 2, and in slot 2, I'll be using IP ID 62, 63, and 66. That means those IP IDs cannot be used again in any of these programs. So each program has to have unique IP IDs per processor. So if you have another processor, then yeah, you could use those same IP IDs. But again, you're using a different processor. But if you're using one processor, each program needs its own, or each device symbol and every program needs its own IP ID. Okay, so I'm selecting slot 2. From there, I click on send. And then you'll see the program being sent. You'll see the processor restarting, and also you have your time lapse. This may take a few seconds or a few minutes, so just be patient. While that's happening, I'll just jump over to the server config page. Let's close this window. And in the server config page, we're going to go to control systems. And right here, we're pretty much going to tell the server what instances Crestron will be controlling. Also, this is for smart graphics setup. So you will only use this if you're using the media player object. If you're using the simple module and not using the media player object, then it would be a different way of setting up the MMS. You won't even have to go into the config page. But since we are using smart graphics, we have to go to the config page under the control systems tabs under Crestron and select the instances we will be controlling. So I'm going to be controlling all my instances. And then we have to enter the processor IP address. Mine is 192.168.1.43. Now you'll be entering that information for all the instances. And if you recall previously, I said we had to jot down the IP ID for the MMS. Here is where we will be entering that information. For the MMS, our IP ID was 62. So look for 62. And you will be selecting that for all the instances. And then once you've selected your IP ID for all your instances, you're going to select save. Just give it a few seconds. Let's go check on our program. So we'll minimize this window. And as you can see, the send button has changed to send again. That means that the process was successful and that the program is in the processor. So at this point, we could go back to the sample program folder. We downloaded it off the Autonomic or SnapAV website. So that's here. And this is pretty much the archive where we selected the SMW file. So what we're going to do is scroll to the top or bottom, depending on how you have this sorted, and you're going to look for a folder that says Autonomic X Panel for SnapAV. You're going to double click that, and then you're going to look for the same label again. But this time it's for the X panel. This time you're selecting the X panel icon. So as mentioned before, Autonomic X Panel for SnapAV, and you're going to select that again. Open. Give it some time. Initially, you may not have any connection. Right now, I may have a signal connection, but I'm not going to select anything. But if you have an error message that pops out from the left side saying that it's disconnected, don't worry about that. Just go to the very top to the menu bar, and you're going to see the options. Select options, and then host settings. You could also use the shortcut, which is Control H. So go to host settings, and under host name or IP address, you're going to enter the IP address of your processor. Mine is already in here, ending in 1.43. And if you recall, I also said jot down the IP ID for the X panel. For this project, it's 63. It's already entered. So then we select connect. And this is pretty much our X panel. You could, here at the right side, bottom right corner is your zones. I'm using an 801E, that's why I don't have 9 and 10. Had I had a stacked amp, it would show 9 and 10. Currently, my program only goes up to 10 zones. It would require some modifications to include more zones. But to start off, you're going to select the zone. We'll select my desk. And here is your amp power toggle. This is pretty much your power button. So if it's black, it's not powered on. As you see, the zone is selected, so it's turned on blue. It's the same status applies for the power button. So if you select the power button, here, that means the zone CP desk is turned on. You also have a mute button. If it's lit up blue, that means the zone is muted. Now it's unmuted, and we have our ramp volume up and ramp volume down. You only have to press and hold it for it to go all the way up or all the way down. If you want, you could also just tap it. And then you have your instances: main, player A, player B, player C, and D. And you also get a label for each player. I have many servers, so I had to label my instances 5 main, so I'm not getting confused with the 3E or the 1E. And so yeah, so this is pretty much your X panel. You can select other zones. And as you can see, that zone was set to player A, so it'll even show you what it was previously set to. And that's pretty much the X panel. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you're able to get your X panel running. All right, take care.